It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Lori's here. Renee's here. Alex is here. We're going to talk about WWDC. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. And the rumor is they're going to announce the ARM-based Macs. We'll also talk about the rumor about a new iMac, what you could expect. And Apple's posted information about a password manager on GitHub. Maybe you'd like to write one. It's all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly. MacBreak Weekly comes to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether they're working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 717, recorded Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Meet me at the Train Museum. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by LastPass. Prepare for the unexpected in your business with LastPass, trusted by over 17 million users and 61,000 businesses worldwide. Visit lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest Apple news. The news. We rotated Andy out this week. Lori Gill is in for Andy Ihnatko. Lori Gill, managing editor at iMore. Actually, I don't know who the substitute is. We rotate you all equally. That's all I know. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
I heard you before the show. Alex was doing his office hours on projectors. Are you going to have a giant projector stage for Sickburn's Budokan performance? Is that what's going on?
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can arrange. I can arrange that.
Alex Lindsay can arrange that. That's his motto. I can arrange that. 090.media. He is the king of streaming media there and everywhere. And it's good to see you, Alex. Welcome.
Good to be here.
And all the way to my left, your left, my right, stage somewhere, is Renee Ritchie of youtube.com/Renee Ritchie fame. Hey, Renee.
Hey, Leo. Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it. I know that with the weeks when Andy is the most passionate about a topic is the weeks we don't have him on.
I know, it sucks. It sucks. we just do it basically in rotation because I can't handle 5 people very well on a. I think it's just too many to do it for a show.
I thought it was levels. You judge which one of us is going to break levels in a particular episode. you politely ask us to come back next week when we're calmer.
Calm down. So what would it be Andy is upset about this week? What would be the big story for Andy?
I don't know.
Week?
I just figured he's going to be all sorts of exuberant about the possible incredible painful transition to ARM processors on the Mac.
We're getting closer now. Mark Gurman says on Bloomberg that Apple will announce it, the ARM chips on Mac at WWDC, which is next week or 2 weeks, I guess. That's pretty exciting. June 22nd. That makes sense. I think you might have speculated that, Renee, that if you're going to get people moving to ARM in 2021, and that's the other rumor, that you're going to have to tell developers now.
Yeah, I don't know if they will, but they literally could just take Steve Jobs' keynote from the PowerPC to Intel transition, overdub a couple words. Like the Mac is living a double life. It's all about power efficiency, power per milliamp or performance per milliamp, and just replay that entire thing and say, we looked at the roadmap. It's more of a parking map at this point, and we believe that we can make a better future with our own silicon destiny, and then my biggest question is, are they going to do a monolithic keynote if they don't have to put everyone in the room, or will there be like announcements all week instead of all on one day? So it'll be super fun if there is a jam-packed keynote on Monday where they drop one news bomb after the other. But an argument could be made that spacing them out and having like an iPhone day and an iPad day and a Mac day could be just as interesting, since we're all watching from home.
Yeah.
Especially right now where, every day is potentially a keynote. That could be what they do every single day, just kind of make an announcement for the next big thing that's coming.
Oh, I hope every day is not a keynote.
Yeah, it only takes so much, right?
Oh, my God. Let's see. June 22nd is a Monday, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll definitely cover whatever they do Monday. Tuesday, who knows? I mean, we'll be doing MacBreak Weekly. I guess we could either be talking about what they announced on Monday, or if they're doing, this is the problem, is we won't know until it's actually happening.
Yeah.
So we may be starting MacBreak Weekly next Tuesday and then say, oh, we're going to cut right now to the stage. Well, it won't be a stage. Well,
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do keynotes every day. So
yeah.
But if they're pre filmed, they just have to hit the play button and we just watch.
When you work on a lot of keynotes, though, it's not just what's happening on stage. It is all the PR around it, all the planning, all the process. There's just this massive village, almost a small city, that is part of the push of giving that. I'm not saying that they're not going to do that. They may decide to do it all week, but if they do, it's really hard. There's a reason that most companies don't do that. It's not just because of the stage and everything else. It's because the PR gets everybody queued up and teed up for it. And there's streams and there's, where they're going to do ad buys and, all the other things that are really, all these companies when they're doing these keynotes, there's just this giant machine that you're kind of in the middle of to make that work. And so I think that it's challenging to stretch it out for the entire village that's involved with rolling anything out new.
Yeah.
There's also so many
they might do
potential.
it, but I don't think.
There's so many potential points of failure too, of like, oops, we accidentally announced something earlier than we were supposed to, or something like that.
Yeah. Somebody got. My big question is, there's like, so far I look at my timeline and a bunch of people are, oh God, finally, Intel's been so slow. I just want the battery life improvements, the performance improvements, the ability to not have fans going all the time. And then you see developers and people who run Windows and they're like, they're gonna get rid of OpenGL. They've already got rid of 32-bit apps. I'm not gonna be able to compile anything. I'm not gonna be able to run virtual machines. What's gonna happen to my Windows boot camp? And it seems like all of these things are equal parts pleasure and pain to different people at different times.
And I think that the transition, my guess is the transition will take at least 2 or 3 years to do a complete transition, maybe 5. I think that the Air type computer is probably the most reasonable one to start with. But then after that, I think you start slowly moving towards the pro machines. But I think the pro machines could be 2023, 24. Do
you think they'll do that though? They won't keep Xeons or whatever the Intel chip is on a iMac Pro and the Mac Pro.
I think eventually they could move over to ARM, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I mean, if they did it in 5 years, I'd be impressed.
What would be missing? Is it raw performance or something else?
Well, it's the support from the apps. The apps that are needed for the pro side are just much different than the app. It's one thing to make your smaller computers run it, but like, is Photoshop going to run on it, and is Maya going to run on it, and is
they will run
all these other
in emulation? Will they run, or will you?
Yeah, but the problem is that graphics processing needs generally, if on the pro side,
that has to be redone.
It really needs to be at full performance, and I think eventually it may run faster and may run better. But I think that they're going to what Apple doesn't need is to be. They've just come out with one of the best pieces of hardware ever made as far as the Mac Pro goes. Why cut it out at the knees, with some kind of newfangled chip?
Also, like the I/O story, like right now they're dependent. Dependent's a bad word, but they have PCIe and Thunderbolt 3, and that's going to move to USB 4 and Thunderbolt 4 or whatever. But they don't have an ARM story around Thunderbolt yet. And what are you going to do on the high-level pro computers? I think there's a lot of they need time to ramp up things like the amount of power you can have in an ARM chip. We haven't seen Apple make like a 65-watt. Any really high-end ARM chips yet, and we haven't seen them do a lot of high-end I/O yet. They max out at USB-C on the iPad Pro, but I think Alex is right that over the 4 or 5 years, a lot of that can change.
The good news is USB 4 is soon, and it uses the Type-C connector, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder.
Outstanding. We have one more connector.
Yeah, one more confusing.
That won't be compatible with everything else.
Yeah.
Between our Thunderbolt and our USB-C, and the ones that will handle power versus data, you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
I feel like Apple should dump Thunderbolt. That this, with USB 4 coming, which has similar throughput, right? It's almost as fast.
It's basically Thunderbolt.
It's 40 gigabits.
Yeah.
Which is what Thunderbolt is. I feel like this would be a good time to unify and say, look, if you see a Type-C connector, it's going to be USB 4. And it'll do all the same. It'll do DisplayPort. It'll do all the other things, charging.
Power delivery.
Yeah, PD. So why not just say, I feel like that Thunderbolt is is like FireWire. Apple has had a history, SCSI, FireWire, Thunderbolt, of kind of throwing themselves into the latest new thing, and then slow adoption on the PC side, slow adoption from the peripheral manufacturers.
So that was a huge advantage for Apple. The FireWire, what might look like a fiasco from the outside, is that so Apple first there was no royalties on FireWire until all the camera manufacturers had it embedded in all those cameras, and then because that was the easiest way to get it. And then Apple
then we
added, I think it was $2, something like that. But when you look at how that rolls up the chain, it ends up increasing the cost of a computer by $50.
Right.
And so when it's magnified, and so what it did is it stopped all the PC manufacturers, and it just destroyed doing video on a PC for a long time, because it was, if you had a camera, you'd be like, oh, I got FireWire, it'll just work, and so I'm going to buy a Mac. So people were buying Macs because it was easier to just take FireWire, camera. So Apple, before they needed, when they needed that kind of edge, they got it by keeping the PC manufacturers out of using FireWire, and basically you had all these stupid ways of trying to get into a PC from those cameras. I mean, it just was really painful for a couple of years, and so it just set them back years. If you were a PC user doing video, in the early 2000s, you were crazy. Like you were, people like us were like, oh, that is so weird. Like, why would you do that? Because it's so hard, and so Apple, that was a really good move by Apple that served its use for while it did it as a business. I mean, we can talk, Andy, if he was here, would be very upset about the whole thing. But
I'll be upset for him. I hate it. I'm mad.
But from a tactical perspective of owning your market, Apple did a pretty good job there of keeping PC manufacturers away from what was at the time one of their core markets.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good thing.
It's not a good thing from a competition perspective.
For a user's point of view, yeah.
For pros, it did give, even Thunderbolt gave a lot of throughput that just wasn't available through any other interconnect at the time.
So, but we're going to enter a new era. If you're going ARM, why not just go USB 4 across the board? It's got power delivery. This is Jim Salter's article from last September, but he describes all the capabilities. This is an Ars Technica, and says 2020, we're going to start seeing USB 4. By 2021, widespread availability. That ties nicely with the ARM schedule calendar. I feel like this would be a good time to handle that. Anyway, I don't know why I threw that one in.
It's Apple, Leo. They're going to come up with their next generation proprietary. It'll be called Stormport or something, and it'll unify Lightning and Thunderbolt instead of USB.
So if you go ARM, do you have to have? You can't use Radeon cards. You have to now have you have to have the ARM GPUs. Alex, is that the case?
I don't know if you have to.
Do you not? Can you use Radeon? Because that would solve some of the compatibility issues if the GPU.
Well, I think eventually,
was the same.
well, by having everybody write to metal, that solves that problem. It allows Apple to basically.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole point is that you write to what an intermediary that Apple does, and Apple can change whatever it wants behind it, and it doesn't affect you. And
how is metal adoption?
CPU and GPU and
is metal adoption pretty universal in the Mac space?
It's not universal, but it's definitely picking up speed. I mean, everyone knows that it's going to get harder and harder to. And this, giving people a year to understand why it's important to do that, will also continue to accelerate that. But I don't think Apple's going to support OpenGL. I mean,
they shouldn't. They haven't supported it all along very well.
My guess is also that they'll be doing custom GPUs for where they use Intel embedded right now. They'll do their own custom GPUs, and those will probably be way better than Intel's GPUs. So people who use things like 12-inch MacBooks or anything that's relied on an integrated whatever the Mac Mini style device is, those will have much better power efficiency from the graphics. But they'll still go to discrete, because I don't think Apple's going to be spinning things like giant NVIDIA or Radeon cards anytime soon, so they'd have to have some capability of.
ARM has always had its own, Mali GPU capabilities. I have no idea how good they are, but that's what phones use. They don't have dedicated.
Apple
GPUs.
uses imagination, yeah.
They use
I think the big thing is, as you interact with Apple hardware, as this keeps on moving forward, as Apple gets rid of Intel, the issue is really going to be the separation between companies that make software for many platforms and companies that make only for Apple. If you're only making it for Apple, I think you're going to see a lot more performance.
Yeah.
You're going to see a much better experience for the user, and it's just going to get harder and harder to write cross-platform apps. And that doesn't hurt necessarily. I mean, I don't think Apple cares.
It's that same kind of lock-in. Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
thing.
So
I was joking earlier on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I was joking earlier on Twitter that part of the announcement will be one more thing. It turns out Electron apps don't work on Mac.
That would be
We don't
nice.
know. We tried.
Yeah,
we
couldn't
rebooted.
do
We
it.
flashed the pram. We
Yeah.
got a second latte from Cafe Max, but little things just won't run. Sorry. Here's our APIs for making Catalyst.
Electron is the new Flash. I wouldn't mind that. I mean, it would kill a whole lot of apps that are Electron-based right now for cross-platform reasons. So if you were an Apple developer right now, the best thing to do would be to do it in Xcode, use Metal, use all the Apple frameworks. Don't be doing your own thing. And I guess it wouldn't be so hard to have flip a switch in Xcode and say, okay, now cross-compile over to ARM.
Depending on your dependencies.
Well, stop using that Intel reference code. That's always a bad idea.
Not the
It's
Intel.
just like
There's
one of
going to
those
be a lot
things
of things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And if you've got time, the big thing is to every time you update is to you have to tackle different parts of the code to get it.
Well,
Apple gave us like 6 or 7 years to fix.
Right. That's a long
32 to 64.
Yeah.
It was not like it's very slow moving. And then people were all up in the arms, and I still have apps that won't work because they didn't move to 64.
So it finally
announced
happened
it
in
a long time
Catalina.
ago.
Yeah. So that's a long time.
But the problem was it was too long, because if Apple gave them a year, they would have just sat down and done it.
Well,
but
we'll
because
find
they
out.
gave them a decade, the people who coded it were no longer at those companies, and they had no idea how to go back and fix all those
We'll
things.
find out if this other strategy is a better strategy, because I have a feeling Apple's going to be.
The thing is that they've been doing this for years. Like previously, they went from the old system of software to Next. They just bought Next and they made OS 10, and they're not doing it this time. But year after year, they are replacing all of the modules inside Next, and probably they'll get to the kernel. They've been doing that. They've been rewriting the kernel for a long time as well, and each of those steps has been painful. Like APFS was really painful for some people, and rewriting the daemons like LaunchD and what was the other one? The networking daemon. They had to roll that back. It was so painful. But
what wasn't painful? The end user experience was pretty transparent.
Yeah, I mean, if you depended on 32-bit apps, like, if you were a gamer or if you were someone using audio plugins, that bit you really hard. But my thing is it's like 80% of people won't notice. And those are the people who they buy a Mac and they type, maybe into a typing app or into Google Docs or something, and they use like all the built-in stuff. They may not notice the transition at all. And 20% of people will be absolutely tortured by it. But those are the same people who've been tortured by Apple for the last decade. Every year.
And the hard part. The hard part for the developer is that they're not going to. The user isn't going to blame Apple. If a user downloads your app and it doesn't work, they're going to blame the developer. They're like
system integrity protection and driver kit. These and some like super duper app has had to be rewritten how many times now because Apple, or even like BBI, because Apple's taken away certain privileges that they used to just have for free on an open architected Mac of the past. And that's all. For anyone who's doing anything outside a Mac App Store app, it's really painful.
Well, that's why
it gets harder and harder with every new software iteration too. I can imagine it must be really frustrating for Mac app developers coming from something that was more open, more, just do what you want on your computer. From my perspective, I'm always disappointed to hear when more software, security features come into play that are great for my protection, but also limiting for what I want to put on my computer. I do feel like I should have that option. I think we've talked about this before. It'd be nice to have a little button or a little switch that lets you say, I take on the responsibility of understanding the issues that could come into play if I download this. And then it's on you if you break your computer.
Well, they kind of do. It's a command line, though. It's in the shell, right? So they kind of do. If that's what you want, you should be able to use the shell.
I think that's actually something you said, is that if you want that, exactly what you're saying is that if you want those to release those protections, you better know how to do it.
So that's I don't know if that's conscious on Apple's part, but that's not a bad way to do it. Say you got to at least know how to open a terminal and type in a command. That seems like a minimum.
And one of the things we get into, though, is that you have to wait whether Apple thinks it's important. This is where this is the problem with all of this, is that there's been, like, for instance, we're doing a lot of video conferencing, and there's been chaos in the video conferencing world only on the Mac.
Really?
Because of security, everyone started following Apple's rules about signing their apps and so on and so forth. And so suddenly Zoom, if you wanted to use a virtual camera, which means that if you're using something like Memo Live or OBS or you would, to use a virtual camera to get into Zoom, for instance, or into other apps, suddenly all that just stopped working.
Is that why that happened? I was wondering what happened. That was Apple's gatekeeper stuff. It was Apple's gatekeeper. It had always been there. They just weren't following the rules. They had skipped over the rules. And so when they all well know.
Right. So when Zoom said, "Oh, you know what? We're gonna," so like Zoom 2 weeks ago, you could unmute somebody. Now you can't. You can't unmute the other side now. You can request their unmute, which is the same way Hangouts worked forever and everything else. But the virtual cameras all stopped working. Now they're working again, and there's a different set of processes. But it took a while because Apple's system is not, there's just not a lot of infrastructure for that type of thing.
Just as what you said, actually, I blame Zoom for that. Because Zoom historically didn't want to do anything Apple's way. And so when Apple changed the rules, they weren't ready to fix it. Now they're doing it Apple's way, right?
I mean, well, the reason Zoom has really ran the table in the spring was because it was really easy to use. Right. And then they have all these people using it, but now it's got security issues. And so now they've tightened all those security issues down, and they've worked on their, the two big things for Zoom are, stability and security. And so they've been tweaking all of those. And of course, it just causes more trouble here, but no one's going somewhere else because nothing else is, competitive right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying. We might see competitive solutions in the fall, as Google and Microsoft and other folks, increase their feature set, but they're at least a year behind.
Ease of use and joie de vivre.
Well, I have to say,
and it's not beyond ease of usage. It's just the tool set is so much deeper in Zoom that it'll take them. So they got what they needed, which was the expansion. I don't think they meant to get it that fast, but they now have a year ahead of time, and they're just now all they have to do is tighten all the hatches. It'll probably be anyway.
You obviously.
I use all of them every day. I just use them all. I use them all every day. Like I literally am on almost. This morning so far. I've been on Zoom, Blue Jeans, Skype here.
Have you accidentally streamed a stream that you were streaming yet, Alex? Like been 3 layers deep, like zoomed your Skype call that was in Hangouts.
But then, I've had ones where I had something opened, and I was in 2 different places at one time. Fortunately, no one was in the other one, but I suddenly realized that I had 2 things open at the same time. You get lost in the windows. But then you have ones like Chime. You have like Chime that Amazon has, and you're like, why do they even keep developing that? Have you ever been on a Chime call?
Nobody's asked me to be on a Chime call yet. Yeah. No.
Thank goodness.
I just resent it though. I was on a Zoom call yesterday. I had to update Zoom, and I don't like installing all this stuff on my Mac. You don't need to with WebRTC, and but nobody will use my Jitsi server. Nobody. So it's frustrating to me because here I am installing Zoom, and I already told Lisa the minute quarantine's over, I'm erasing this iMac and starting over. Because it's got everything's
now that you have Zoom. Now that you have Zoom, I want you to come on my little morning thing and do a second hour with us.
Well, I won't be on, but I'll be sitting in the bleachers. Absolutely.
No, I want you to come on and talk to people about.
I don't know anything.
But you know what you like.
I know what I like.
You know how to stop yourself from cussing on the air.
Yeah, I do know. I do know that. Yeah.
I didn't ask you
picked that up, did you, Lori? Hey, Lori, my Traeger comes Thursday, by the way.
Ooh, how exciting.
I'm so excited.
Every single weekend now we've been slow roasting different various meats. We did a brisket and
that's the first thing I'm going to do.
What did we do? A brisket and a pork shoulder.
What flavor pellets do you use? Just the general ones?
We got the mesquite pellets and the general pellets. Yeah. And I actually prefer the Traeger.
I knew Alex. This is, by the way, how I completely put through Alex off the track because I knew that he would glom onto this one. I will come on, Alex. I promise. I'll come on, not tomorrow. I'll come on Thursday.
It takes a while to schedule. We have to schedule it.
So you're scheduling. I didn't even know this is that fancy.
It's a week or 2.
Weeks?
It's like we schedule. There's a second hour every. We had 350 people on this morning talking about mic placement.
So awesome. God, I could learn so much. I should really go to these things. I would learn
Tomorrow we're
so
talking
much.
about optics. So,
And you're not talking about like political optics. You're talking about actual optical technologies.
actual what light does before it gets to the sensor. There's we're going to have an hour discussion on that. But one of the things that people have been asking for is they want to have a host, talk about hosting and shows and stuff like that. And there's a lot of MacBreak listeners now that are in the group. So they've been like, when is Leo coming?
I'll be glad.
I'm going to ask.
I have to get up early. It's 7 a.m. Oh my God. Oh my God.
You don't have to get up until 8. You don't have to be there until 8. You can get there.
Pretend you're on the East Coast.
It's like I'll be in the Today Show 4th hour. Is that what's going on? I'll be in the kind of with you and Hoda.
No. It's the primary. It's the big draw.
In between the animals and the cooking segment.
Yeah. Anyway, so
everybody's all warmed up.
You weren't here, but Lori, every time Lori has a pick, I fear it because I buy everything she recommends. I don't know what it is about you, Lori. Maybe we just on a wavelength, but there's every
we like good things. That's what it is.
So she was my big green egg. As you know, Alex and I both have big green eggs, which we love. But my big green egg's getting cracked. I maybe get it too hot. I don't know, but the inner liner got cracked. It's starting to wear out. It's been 8 years. It's fine. And I use it like 5 times a week. I do a lot of barbecue. So Lori mentioned this Traeger grill. Are you familiar with these, Alex? It's as much a smoker as it is a grill. Yeah. And she said she just got the 780 Pro, which really looks pretty damn good. So it's a pellet.
You use that to roast people on Twitter as well as meats? Oh
God, if only. I put some people. It's got 2 racks for Twitter users. So
that'd be awesome.
The idea is this is a pellet grill, so it stores pellets there, and it has a little auger that slowly pushes them in, and a little bucket on the other end where the ashes come out. But the coolest thing that Lori mentioned is it's Wi-Fi enabled. So I can control it with my phone. They call it Wi-Fire. Wi-Fire. So I can control it with my phone. I did, by the way, get the Traeger pellet sensor as well, so I'd know when I was.
Oh, you remember I had said like that was the one thing was like I have to go out and just check and make sure that there's still pellets on the grill. With that sensor, you don't even have to do it.
I ain't going out, man. I'm just gonna. I could do probably
34 burger capacity, Leo.
30 freaking 4 burgers, baby.
That's a whole baseball game.
6 racks of ribs. It's a lot. 780 square inches of cooking space. So anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm not getting rid of the big green egg, right, Alex? That's still the king in terms of flavor.
Yes. No, for barbecue, it absolutely is.
This only goes up to 500 degrees, which is shocking.
Yeah, I know. It's
chilly.
How do you cook a pizza on that?
Yeah.
Like I have the little uni that goes up to
the uni. It's got a smoker intent.
Like 800.
It's really a smoker. I think it's a smoker and a grill. But
you're supposed to cook it slow.
Yeah. So that's why I'm going to do the brisket. How was the brisket?
Yeah. Oh my God, so good.
Are you a dry rub? Good. Are you a dry rub gal?
It was a dry rub. Yeah.
It
was a dry
I figured you were.
It was very tasty.
Okay.
How long did you cook it?
6 hours.
Because it has the Wi-Fi. You can literally set the temperature.
Wi-Fi.
And it just slowly puts the pellets in as it's needed.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty. It's like I mean, honestly, for people who like to smoke meats, they probably wouldn't like this as much because you're not sitting in the backyard for 6 hours poking at your sticks
with a big old brush,
trying to keep the temperature going. You know, like I get that there's like a joy in all of the like babysitting your smoker, but for people like me, this is like throw a 20-pound slab of meat on it, turn it on, walk away, come back, eat the most delicious food ever. Like, oh my God. It's great.
Oh my God. Well, I justified it because it's not cheap. It's $1,000, but I justified it, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not eating out. I might as well be able to smoke my own gosh darn brisket in the house. So that's why.
Yeah.
Why have a house if you can't smoke brisket in it?
If you can't smoke in your meats. Anyway, Alex, I would love to. We're talking about Alex's office hours. And if you're interested in this, it's daily, 7 days a week. The warm-up begins 6 a.m. Pacific. 7 a.m. is when the conversations begin. 8 and there's a topic, right, Alex? And then at 8 a.m.
Well, so 7 a.m. is, so 6 a.m. we all just start, we have coffee, we're talking.
Filtering
it's informal. Sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's not as good, but it's pretty fun. And then at 7 o'clock we do Q&A. So any questions about media production, and it can be everything from film to live or whatever, from 7 to 8. And then 8 we have a second hour. So that second hour changes every day, and it's it's a subject that we're we're interested in. So it ranges. It's a very wide range. We had mic placement today. Tomorrow we have optics. Thursday we have mass production of baseball cards from photos.
What?
Like how
that's wild.
So like if you were going to take a whole baseball team for a high school or a grade school, how do you just take all those photos and punch out like actually accurate?
It's quite
one of our members knows how to do it. And then Friday we're talking about Wirecast, and then Saturday we talk about Unreal and Final Cut and live graphics and networking. So it's a crazy. It just changes every day.
YouTube recommended every day now. I just go there and it's got Alex and his group of people.
Yeah, well, you show up in my YouTube recommended every day now, so Renee, so it's fair. It's Alex Lindsay on YouTube, youtube.com/Alex Lindsay, LINDSAY, and there's a link in there to the Zoom if you want to do it in the Zoom. But he does later post it on YouTube. You don't stream the whole thing live on YouTube, right? You just post it.
We stream we just stream the Q&A. So 7 to 8 is streamed every weekday,
so
and it's all indexed. So it's all indexed. So if you want to see what it's even looking like, you can open it up and click on times and just jump to see what the discussion looks like.
Nice. Very cool. Apple, another rumor, WWDC may also have a redesigned iMac. Oh, please, Apple, don't do this to me, please.
I'm ready for a new iMac, so I'm excited about this.
This is from Sonny Dixon. Oh,
yep.
I can't afford it, but it's going to resemble the XDR. It's going to have very slim bezels, according to Sonny. The iPad Pro design language. What does that mean to you, Renee? I don't know what that means.
So the only reason why I wonder is because he's got that separate from the Thanos snapped bezels. You know, Apple usually snaps their fingers and takes half the bezels off, but that's what they did with the iPad Pro. So, and the iMac is already pretty squared off. Like it's already got similar language. So I'm not sure why those two things are separated. I'm also not, because I thought the new design was coming with the mini LED displays, and rumor has it those displays have been pushed out till next year, unless the iMac is going to debut those displays the way it debuted IPS panels, several years ago. So maybe this is going to be, and is it going to be an iMac Pro, or is it going to be the regular iMac? Because I think if Apple has very limited amounts, it'll make sense to be the Pro at first.
Maybe the fact that it's going to use an AMD Navi GPU would give us a hint. Is that, Alex, considered a high-level or low-level GPU?
I actually am not that familiar with it, so I'm not sure.
I think that's just the generation. I don't think that's the power level. I think that's just their latest generation of graphics cards.
It's a Radeon, or it's not a Radeon.
I would guess
a Navi.
I would guess this is a pro level. This is a pro level. They're not going to do the base one this way, I don't think.
Yeah,
but man, do I want one.
Navi cards include the Radeon RX 5700, the 5600 XT, and the 5700 XT.
Yeah, it's their new architecture for graphics cards.
Navi is the architecture. Yeah. They're still Radeons. Yeah. Okay, but that does sound like maybe that leans a little more towards pro. Sonny says T2 chip. Clearly, he doesn't understand that everything Apple puts out from now on will have a T2 chip.
Until they go T3, and then hopefully we'll get Face ID. Right. Which is why I want Face ID on this too. Where's my T3 chip?
Oh, okay. So that is relevant in the sense that it isn't the T3. There isn't Face ID.
Yeah, well, because the T2 has no... The T2 is basically, I forget if it's an A8 or an A10. It's one of the earlier generation A-series processors adapted. And they would need... an A11 was sort of a neural engine. They needed a neural engine earlier than they could otherwise get it. So I think it leverages the GPU to do a lot of neural engine stuff.
But it does have fingerprint.
And then the A12...
It has fingerprint, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't have the neural network that you need to do the adversarial Face ID parsing, because Face ID isn't like a one and done. It's an identification process. So they would need a new generation T chip to enable that. But boy, do I want that on an iMac.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? You just come in, sit down, and it knows it's you.
Like Windows Hello, but good.
Yeah, Hello's too slow.
I mean, not good. It's like secure.
Yeah. Yes, it's not secure and it's slow. So it's like why?
Yeah.
And I think. I think the number one thing I'm happy about, Lori, is no more Fusion Drive. I can't believe they still sold that for. That's crazy. It's such a bad idea.
It's frustrating for users who still have a Fusion Drive. I have that on my iMac, and it's a frustrating experience to have to deal with that sort of in betweenness. Which I get it. I get that. It's less expensive, but still good, but not good enough. So again, though, this could be why this might be leaning toward an iMac Pro, because are they really going to just eliminate Fusion altogether? I think it makes sense to eliminate it on the Pro models, but to keep the prices down, I'm not sure they're ready to eliminate that on the non-Pro models.
Right.
So I don't know. We might still be having iMacs with Fusion drives all along. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's still a
the
21-inch. There's still the low cost, and so maybe they will have that. It's such a bad idea. The idea was you have a little tiny. It was back from the days when SSDs were too expensive.
It was a great idea, a terrible implementation.
Yeah, maybe that's it. You had tiny SSD, a big spinning disk. You got the capacity of an old spinning disk, and theoretically, you got the speed in some cases of the SSD, but it never really delivered.
And for less money because SSDs were so expensive.
Yeah, that's really why they did it. But I think that those days are long gone. So forget it. And especially if you have a T2 in there, which is the disk controller. It just seems sensible to
just have a good SSD in there and let people hang as much external storage off the back as they want to.
Yeah, that's one advantage. That's one reason I love Thunderbolt 3. Yeah, Thunderbolt 3 means I can have a full speed external drive if I don't mind spending thousands of dollars for it.
Yeah, that's all got to come down to a lot of the stuff. Like it reminds me of like the old scams where CDs will be cheaper than cassettes. Just wait, like it never happens. Like they always promise you the new thing will be cheaper, ends up being triple the price and going down to double the price.
Actually, I would argue that today a tape is probably more expensive than a CD because tapes are kind of obsolete and rare and vintage.
Hipster. They're hipster, man.
Yeah.
They were tapes were half the cost of CDs back in the early 90s. But we're talking about 20, I think if I remember correctly, it was 21 cents a unit versus 44 cents a unit for the CDs. And that's 1990 prices. So CDs were twice as much money. They somehow decided to multiply that out to twice as much money on the end user cost, even though it's twice as much, the delta was 20 cents between the production cost between CDs and cassettes, even in the early 90s at their height. And this is what created, Napster. It was just highway robbery.
Yeah.
So we need the Napster.
It was a good time to be in the record business. Yeah.
So, do you think this will replace the existing iMac? God, I hope it doesn't. iMac Pro. Because I spent $7,000 on an iMac Pro. I don't.
But they're not going to take it away. So this is the same thing with the ARM Mac. There's a bunch of people who are like, I should wait and not buy an ARM Mac now. And no, like if you use the software, if you're like in production, everything works on the current generation stuff beautifully. The next one is going to be a Rev A board. Unless you're an early adopter and you have like a little bit of pain that you're willing to take, buy the last and best of the current instead of the first and probably worst of the next thing. So all those people with iMac Pros, those are going to be great for a while now. Let people like me and probably Leo, maybe Alex, buy whatever comes next, and we'll tell you how well it works. And then in a year or two, you'll be happy to buy one that's really stable.
I love my iMac Pro. Except for all the Zoom big blue button bozo stuff I have had to install on it over the years. But it's nicely configured. I have to say I have no use for the speed, as we talked about last week. But I like it. It's pretty.
Yeah. It's got a great display. And if this has mini LED, it'll be phenomenal.
I can't
it's got
see
an XDR class display.
You know what it's going to get me? It's going to get the bezel-less display is going to get me.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's going to be the XDR
what you mean.
display. It's going to be the color. Like it's going to look better than real life. It's going to make you want to live. And the first time when we went to that first Apple event where they announced the 5K iMac for the first time, it was like, okay, this screen looks better than my real life. And then they added P3 color gamut. And I'm like, okay, now it looks way better than my real life. I just want to go inside and live in there. And they keep doing that.
And I think that you're going to see, I mean, I don't know if this one's going to have it or not, but we are moving very quickly towards the 8K, 120 frame per second HDR, which I've said before. And every time Apple looks like it's getting close to a new monitor or a new iMac or whatever, I go, well, maybe this is the one that we see that
10-bit color, Alex.
Move.
10-bit.
Yeah, and it just
the display.
Because when you see those, I've 120 frame per second, 8K HDR looks like you're looking into a window. Like it doesn't look like a monitor anymore. It just looks like you're looking into another reality on the other side.
You're not helping.
And now all the Apple displays all the Apple displays do temporal dithering because they're 10-bit pipelines, 8-bit displays. So what they do is change the color slightly, in microsecond intervals, and our brains just read them as there being more colors. But when you have like very, very small level gradients, you can still see banding, and you can see where that happens sometimes. And when we get to actual 10-bit panels with peak brightness and deep blacks, peak sustained brightness, and it is going to look like another world.
This is all very credible. I mean, Sonny Dixon is a well-known leaker, mostly not so much in Apple space, mostly in
iPhone. Usually gets iPhones, dummy units early.
Yeah. So, but I think it's fairly credible. Just this is what you kind of would expect.
Mm-hmm. It's just early. Like, it seems early to me, but I don't know. Like, there have been rumors. I thought the rumors for the impending iMac was going to be a refresh. You would just get the 10th generation Intel chips, very similar to what the MacBooks, got. This one I thought would be pushed off till next year, just because of all the shutdowns that have happened recently. But if they have it ready to ship and it is this next generation model, that'll be super exciting.
It's pretty exciting news. So a week from Monday, we will.
Gosh, is it that soon?
Yeah.
Renee, we should be planning where we're going to hang out and have dinner. It's such a bummer that we're not going to actually get to do that this time.
Which parties you're going to go to?
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, again, if not for COVID, Apple would be having to decide what to do with the WWDC keynote in the middle of massive amounts of protests. So I think all things considered, COVID made these decisions much earlier and much easier.
Actually, that's true, because
like
San Jose has seen a lot of protests.
Yeah.
I'm sure the McHenry Theater. Well, they would do it at Steve Jobs, or would they? It's not big enough for
McHenry. It's been McHenry for the last few years. Yeah.
So, that would probably. You know what?
And you'd have 10,000 people landing in the middle of the city right now.
No, this is probably a good thing. They might have done it this way anyway. Who knows? Okay.
Well, they would have had zero time to decide. Like, the thing is, with COVID, they made the decision to go virtual WWDC months ago.
Right.
If not for COVID, they would have to be making that decision literally last weekend.
So I want to actually ask Alex this, because he has some expertise in these kinds of events. Google decided just to say, we can't do Google I/O, and that was because of COVID. They were going to do virtual, and they said, no, not a good idea. Apple's continuing with the idea of virtual. Why would Google not do it and Apple do it? What are the issues?
I think that it just depends on. I think that Google's. I think is their experience is more complicated. I/O is more complicated than what Apple does most of the time. Apple had a lot more time to think about it too. So Apple hadn't announced anything yet, and they were able to just make the date further out.
Right.
Google had the Google was a month or more shorter.
They booked Shoreline Amphitheater.
Where Apple was.
They have to. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Google had. Google had less time to come up with that solution. Right. And I think that, I think I've said this before, I don't even think that conferences make sense anymore. Like, I don't think any of them make sense, even virtual ones. I think that they're just a waste of time. They're an ongoing conversation with developers or with the company, talking about things in a regular, pattern. It would be more powerful than what any of these companies are doing right now. The idea of packing it all into 1 week or 3 days or whatever is kind of arbitrary at this point.
Did you see that Cloudflare announced a 24/7 TV channel to replace their conferences?
That's what they should do. That's exactly what they should do.
Tune in, geek out.
That's the future.
Yeah, but they're doing it all. They're not. It's not an event like for a week or something. By the way, nice shout out to Tech TV and a show that it turns out Matthew Prince and John Graham Cumming watched Call for Help in the Screensavers. They didn't mention my name, but anyway, okay.
What?
Apparently, he wants to do the MTV of geekiness, of tech. But it's quite a schedule they've got. If you go to Cloudflare TV, they're 24/7. They're doing a lot of content. You could probably help them out. What?
Yeah, I mean, this is what people should be doing.
You think this is the future?
This is the. Oh yeah, and because there's you take out that money that you were spending on for a big company, they might spend the conferences for a large company might be 10, 15, 20 million, possibly more per year that they're spending on the booth, the travel, all those things. It's at least that much money for a Fortune 100 company to support. And so you pile that into a 24/7 channel, and you can definitely program a channel that way.
Look at all the live shows they're doing. They're actually doing a lot more than we are. But they also have a lot of content that they can rerun. So this is a full schedule. It started yesterday.
I mean, 6 to 8 hours of live content is about all you need. I mean, that's more than a lot of stuff.
That's all Tech TV did. We just repeat it 3 times.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. It's a great idea.
So you think?
I mean, this is the end of the bottom half of TV. The bottom half of when more companies realize see what Cloudflare is doing and do that, which is everybody should be doing this for their own however you serve your market with content. It doesn't all have to be about your products. It has to be about the market that you're in. Like for instance, I think that Salesforce could build a 24/7 about how to run your company, or like how to manage it and how to and all those things. And then they get a whole group of people that are just watching it that are likely to buy their product. They're building their brand as much as anything else you do that builds brands. But as more and more companies go down that path because they don't have conferences, but they have conference budgets, if they all started going that way, if they spent the money that they spent on conferences on a 24/7 channel, they would get far more. The ROI would be far higher. I guarantee it.
I think that's Matthew's idea. Yeah, it's interesting.
Apple Developer
Network.
So then it's a constant TV channel.
But
so it's kind of Microsoft does that with Channel 9. I mean, it's not, they don't have a full schedule of stuff, but they have a lot of stuff. They have
Christina Warren, though.
They have Christina Warren. They got a good host, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the way,
but there's no reason why you can't. Right.
Everybody's using Zoom. Everybody. There's the famous Cloudflare lava lamp wall that generates truly random numbers, which is hysterical.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lori.
I was thinking about what Alex was saying. In my mind, it seems like it would be more beneficial to these companies to have pre-recorded content that just lives somewhere, like on YouTube, for example, that will get people watching whenever they want on demand, because we're kind of living in a world where people are more expecting an on-demand kind of lifestyle and not scheduling their sit-downs to watch something at a specific time that appeals to them.
Average view time on I mean, all I can say is from the Zooms that I do every morning. Average view time on my YouTube, the same content is about, average view time on YouTube I think is about 13 minutes. Average view time on Zoom is 80. So it's it's over 80.
People leave it live. I think there's something about live. That's why we do our shows live. But honestly, our downloads far exceed our live viewing. Live viewing is about 10%.
They do, but ours is generated for that. So if you're right, Lori, in the sense that if you're not interacting with your audience, then you might as well just put it up as a VOD. And these guys, I don't know how much they're taking people's questions or what they're, of whether they're really interacting with people.
Yeah, taking them by
If you're interacting with your audience, if you're interacting live with your audience in a fairly low latency, like all we're doing is answering questions. And so there's a real reason to be there, in that process. Now,
right.
We do produce VODs. So what you really want is, hey, we're going to have a discussion about this thing, and then we're going to produce some videos 3 days before that go VOD that you should watch before you come. Then you come and you have this discussion because now you've thought about it and you have a whole bunch of people thinking about that at one time. That's it's a mixture of both. So you're right that the VOD, and then you take the whole discussion and you put it on YouTube and you make that a VOD. But there's a live element that a lot of people leave out because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to do live elements. I think people don't get it when they're like, oh, we'll just do live, because they see something like Twit and they see MacBreak, and I explain to people, I'm like, Leo's really good at what he does. It makes it look really easy, and it looks like we're just having a conversation. But but this is doing a live. Every time I have to fill in for Leo, I remember like, oh, this is really hard. So, to do it well and to keep it
somebody noticed.
Well, no, a lot of shows are sequential monologues, and you have a real gift for bringing out conversations, and it's a huge difference.
Well, okay, I'm going to put aside all the flattery, but there is also a psychological thing about live, and I know this from years of live broadcasting, especially on radio. Sometimes people, especially now, like the idea that they're not watching something canned, that this is something going on, even if it's not the same place, simultaneously with them. And that's why I think people, Alex, will do a lot longer on your stream, because what they do is they turn it on, and now there are people in the house who are talking about something they're interested in, and they can continue doing what they're doing. You've become part of their space. Well, and live does that in a way pre-recorded never does.
Yeah, and it empowers the chat. You know, like the chat is
interactivity.
We're now
huge.
synchronous.
Yeah,
you've synced up with everybody. That's
That's why we
so
do
having
live.
the Q&A. That
Yeah.
and so it's a really so I think that doing it live, I think you do have to get really good at making it interactive and having the audience really feel like they're part of it. And I think we're just scratching the surface of that. But I think that I think that a lot of people would benefit from these formats, and it can be anything. You could have a bunch of mechanics at whatever, Ford or BMW or whatever it is, talking about how they do what they do. There's a group of people that would love to ask them questions and talk to them, or talking about to SpaceX. Like I felt like SpaceX, the launch last week was a monumental lost opportunity for them.
Really?
Just a massive, SpaceX had, I don't know how many tens or hundreds of millions of people watching.
There was no interactivity at all. Yeah.
And no interactivity and really just kind of a lukewarm coverage. Like, okay, well, you got a bunch of cameras. Now, I will say the broadcasting the cameras from the space station and all those things are really interesting. But But there was so many places where you could have added graphics and explanations and you could have had other, you could have run for 19 hours while they were going there, having all these live conversations and jumping, former astronauts and bringing all these people in and talking about it because it was historical. It was a historical moment for SpaceX. Why not make it an event that everyone remembers and keeps them up and they're all part of this thing together?
Well, that's why people hire you, Alex, because you need people who understand that opportunity. I'm sure SpaceX was very happy with the number of people who watched, but they also intermingled pre-recorded and live stuff, which is always a mistake. And I see the networks do this too. And that comes from a terrified fear of errors. They want it to all be smooth.
Well, and they're not ready to do what it takes to be. It's also ready not to have it relatively clean. Takes an enormous amount of work, and it takes infrastructure and rehearsal and process and they don't know how to do that.
But they could do it. They just need to hire you. Hint, hint.
And then they had CNBC claiming all the YouTubers who paid for the
Nat Geo. No, Nat Geo took us down. Because during the radio show, I had the stream going in set, and at one point when they actually did the launch, I said, okay, we're going to stop. Let's all listen to this together. Because it's NASA, which means it's public domain, right? I think. Anyway, I assumed. And then the National Geographic took us and 100 other YouTubers down for doing that. They put it back up later. They realized it was a mistake. But that's the...
It was just someone not flipping a bit. There's a bit... Yeah. The bit when you start your YouTube stream is this is my content, and generally it's on. And you just leave it on and you run it. And so
they forgot to say we're rebroadcasting somebody else's content and flip that bit.
All they had to do, there's one little checkbox in YouTube that you just turn off that says that turns off the claim.
Nat Geo actually took NASA and SpaceX down. Whoops. Oops. They fixed it. It's fine. They fixed it. These things happen. What was that? Oh, I was going to say something. Now I forgot. One thing, Christina Warren will be on Twit on Sunday, so
she's awesome.
I love Christina. Ian Thompson, Christina Warren, and Aunt Pruitt on Twit this coming Sunday.
Oh, good panel.
Yeah, I thought so. Apple has done something interesting. We talked about this earlier on iOS Today. They have posted on GitHub the source to it's not the source code to a password manager. It's password manager resources, and I love this idea. I have to point out that Apple doesn't have a password manager. They have Keychain and I guess Safari, so they're not exactly the experts on password management. But I love this idea. They're putting up a place that other password managers can go or websites can go to help. The resources consists of quirks, which is hard-coded bad behavior that screws up password managers. And so their posting is, you could post your own quirks to your site, or if you're a password manager and you know of quirks, Apple's posted a few. Password rules to generate compatible passwords, because many sites have weird rules. They shouldn't, but they do. Changed password URLs, so if your password's wrong, that URL isn't always immediately obvious. Some sites append a two-factor code to the password, and so those sites are a little bit different. So I think Apple's done a good thing I just wonder how much the information they contribute is worth compared to the information I'm sure they hope LastPass and 1Password and all the others will contribute. I doubt the proprietary password managers are going to contribute much. I mean, that's their secret sauce, how well they handle that stuff, right? But I honor Apple for wanting to do this.
Apple has the built-in Safari keychain has become more and more like it is a usable, basic, very basic password manager for people who only use Apple products. Like if you were brand new to electronics and you got an iPhone and a Mac, and it'll offer to generate passwords for you. It'll store those passwords for you. It'll sync them between your devices. It won't do anything fancy like LastPass or 1Password.
Do we know how many people use that? I'm sure Apple knows, but
I want to clarify a little bit, Renee. You're right in that it is a really usable service, but I did have one time when I was updating an operating system on my Mac, and for some reason, iCloud Keychain, it wasn't loading. Eventually it worked itself out, but I was on Apple support and was told that this isn't a password manager. You should be saving these somewhere else. So I think it's important to just call attention to the fact that that keychain should not be the thing that you rely on as a password manager.
I'm sure our sponsor, the people who named the studio, the LastPass studio, would agree with you.
Well, they do so much more too. Like
and it's cross-platform, and there's lots of reasons.
The advantage Apple has is the advantage they always have, and that is the depth of their integration. They can just get in and hook in everywhere immediately. Like you just Face ID and the stuff is there. And for 1Password, for LastPass, for I forget, there's a few of them. They have that extra step where you have to press the button, and they're supposed to have better access. And if all this does is allow LastPass and everybody else to get better integration into iOS, and I think that would be hugely valuable for their users.
It's not that. That's what's
just
weird.
Best practices, right?
Yeah, and if you go, it's pretty sparse. What Apple has posted is fairly sparse. For instance, in Quirks, I remember I mentioned some people use two-factor to append the password. There's only one. There's two sites, U-Trade and USAA. That's it. It's not this vast resource, but partly it's because Apple doesn't really probably have a lot of that information.
Well, they're not doing half of what. Well, they're not doing 90% of what everybody else is doing.
So, I if you look in tools, there's one tool, a JavaScript password rules parser, which that's nice, but I don't think that's probably anything particularly special. I feel like, I'm going to sound terrible here.
Do it. That's why we're here.
I feel like Apple's kind of trolling a little bit here. Like, here's some stuff. Would you like to put your stuff in there?
So we can take it and use it for our own?
They launched a project, I think it was last year or the year before, to try to make what they consider to be increasing complexity of passwords in the web. For them, the web is Safari, but the web in general. And I think they're cooperating with Google and other people to try to simplify it and make it more human for people. And I don't know if this is an offshoot from that, but if there's anything they can do to just make this stuff. Like some companies still don't let you paste into or don't let password managers inject into the fields. And, just identifying those miscreants would be a huge service.
I mean, I feel like a company like Google could add a huge amount to this. Apple just isn't in this business. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think the death of Skype in a lot of ways was that they started wanting you to change it every 6 months or whatever, and so they'd force you to change your password, and then it got to a point where you couldn't remember what it was, and because it's in Skype and not on the web, it wasn't going into my LastPass, easily. I had to do a whole thing, and so I didn't do it correctly. So it literally, me starting up Skype for MacBreak every single time was just getting a new password and just making something up because I couldn't, it was just like, and I just wouldn't use it for anything else. I was like, this is worthless, and I wouldn't log into it. And I don't think, given how few people we run into, that the reason we're having to drop Skype for our point-to-point connections is because we can't, for stuff like doing something like Twit, is no one uses it. Nobody uses it. And you get to a point where I can't even find the person in Skype. Like I type their name or I even type the the email.
Exactly what they're using.
And it doesn't show up on the other side. And you're just like, you guys are crazy. And so we literally just said, we're just going to throw Skype over the bus, under the bus, because we just can't. So we're in this process over the next 2 or 3 weeks getting rid of it for our system that runs a little bit like what Twit does, because I just can't. I'm just tired of trying to get a hold of people. And that's what it is. And the video quality and the audio quality is higher than everything else. And I still can't use it because it's just too much trouble to work with people.
That's a big fumble by Microsoft. I mean, they really massive. They owned the world on this, and they bought Skype, and they gave them a lot of autonomy, which I credit. Skype essentially ran itself.
They didn't rewrite them in .NET the first year.
Yeah, but at the same time, they didn't grab the opportunity. They let it slip by, and now they're regretting it because they have Teams. They have Skype. They also have a bunch of other stuff. They have a Link. It's called Link, I think, which is anyway, they have a bunch of technologies around this. And Zoom just goes, it eats it all up. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Well, I think Zoom has yes, I'll acknowledge up ahead, Zoom is hugely problematic for a number of move fast and break things reasons, but they seem to have a philosophy that's far more similar to Apple and Amazon than it is to Microsoft and even Google. And that is, they don't figure out what they should engineer and then hope to make a usable product. They figure out the product they need to, the end user experience, and then they build the infrastructure behind it to deliver that. And we've seen time and time again, cheap usually beats premium, but experience usually beats cheap. And if you can get a really good experience, people will go to it.
Yeah. Well, by the way, NIST was the one that created that guideline that said change passwords regularly. The guy who thought that up admitted it was a terrible idea, and this has changed that recommendation. Unfortunately, still a lot of my company, the company I work for the radio show, still makes me change the password like every 3 months. And since I never log in, but every 6 months or so, it means it's a call to tech support every single time I log in.
I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but there was a company I worked for that they started making it so that you'd be automatically logged out after 24 hours. And I think they were moving it to 12 hours. And the people who worked there were like, my uploads aren't finished and you're logging me out.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of a conference call and you're logging me out and I've got to log in every 12 hours. This is untenable.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you more secure. It makes people break your security more often.
Well, that's the problem. And that was the problem with rotating passwords frequently.
People put them on stick-out notes and just put it on their computer.
Nobody can remember it.
And that's been the thing for me that's been the lifesaver for LastPass, which I've now used for almost a decade, is that I just let LastPass, if it's in the web, I just have LastPass, generate.
Just do it.
Like I just have
do it.
And I make it like, if you're doing it, once you get to a hash, why not make it 30 characters? Why not make it like,
right.
You're kind of like, sure.
Make it as long as you want.
Really long.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to remember what it is, so yeah.
Let's see. Why don't we take a little break, then we're going to talk about how you can buy your new iMac Pro interest-free. But don't tempt me, Apple. Don't tempt me. Our show today brought to you, this is kind of a coinky-dink, by LastPass. As long as we're talking password managers, let's talk about the best. As Alex mentioned, 10 years, that's how long I've been using it. I discovered LastPass early on. I was using a different password manager, and LastPass came along, and it was just great. And in fact, it wasn't so long after that, maybe a couple of years after I started using it, that Steve Gibson went to LastPass's creator, Joe Segrist. Joe showed him everything, how it does it, and Steve was blown away, very impressed. He started using it. He's our security guy. It's just a great solution. And if you're a company, as we are, that uses LastPass, it's been a boon for those of us who are sending workers home. Suddenly, your employees are home. They're logging into company assets, your bank account, your database. They're logging into our production system. They're logging into the company network. And you want that security. You want that same security that you had at the office. You really want it when people are using it at home. It's always important to have a plan for the unexpected. We've been using LastPass Enterprise for years, but it's not too late. LastPass can be deployed quickly when you need it in the midst of any event to make sure your business keeps running smoothly and that all those employee logins are secure no matter where they're from. They do a number of things. Of course, we talked about the password management. Enterprise-grade password management gives complete oversight of shadow IT. You've got enforceable policies across all password-protected accounts. We require, for instance, two-factor for the master password, things like that. But LastPass isn't just a password manager, and this is kind of important. LastPass has gone beyond that because we need to go beyond the password, frankly. For instance, they now support more than 1,200 single sign-on apps. That means single sign-on is fantastic. That means it's easier for the employees. They have a phone. It says, was that you? You say yes. There's no password involved at all, or there doesn't have to be, and it's more secure. So more convenient and more secure. You get a centralized view when you're using single sign-on, so IT always knows exactly who's accessing what and from where. Very, very valuable. They also do multi-factor. Now, it's more than just Touch ID or Face ID, more than face recognition or fingerprint recognition. They go beyond that to do contextual factors, things like geolocation and IP address. Again, this gets out of the way of the employees. It makes them more secure, but not less convenient. I think that's really remarkable. That's tough. You should be thinking about additional layers of defense beyond the password. LastPass never sends or stores your master password. If it can't access your data, hackers can't. The data that you have in that vault is precious. It's only encrypted and decrypted on your device. And the password's never transmitted. It's using AES 256, super strong encryption, same encryption used by banks and the military. So you don't have to worry. And every device, by the way, LastPass works everywhere your workers work. Android, iOS, macOS, Windows, Linux. I use it in every browser. It's just the easiest thing in the world. LastPass protects by still providing a seamless workflow for your employees. We're just talking about this. You make it hard, they're going to put the password on a Post-it note. Make it easy with LastPass. And I love it that you can share passwords securely, too. Employees are at different locations now. They can't just run over and whisper in your ear the password. But LastPass makes it very easy to share a password without even having access to the password. Just saying, here, you can have access. That's fantastic. So employees, whether they're in the office or remote, have that ability. They get secure access to their work applications with single sign-on and password management. Even, and this is a nice touch, as employees go home, their internet access may be spotty. There's an offline mode for LastPass, both for password management and multi-factor. So it's just little things like that make LastPass a must-have for this tough work environment we're all in. LastPass can help make remote work simple and still make it secure. LastPass.com/twit if you want to find out more. We use it. We love it. We recommend it. It's the first thing I install whenever I have a new device. LastPass.com/twit. We thank them so much. Really, we owe a lot to LastPass for keeping the lights on here at the Twit Studios because, they bought that studio naming rights in the beginning of the year. And little did we know how much we would rely on that to keep things going. So thank you, LastPass. We really appreciate it. LastPass.com/twit. You will be able to buy a Mac, AirPods, iPads, and more with your Apple Card interest-free for a year. I think that's great. I think that's inspiring. You could continue to pay over a longer period of time, but the interest starts coming due after 1 year. iPads, Macs, Apple Pencil, iPad keyboards. You practically need a loan to buy that magic keyboard for the iPad Pro. The XDR. They will have 6-month payment plans for AirPods, Apple TV, and HomePod. I'm not sure why. I guess they're lower. Well, they're not lower priced than the Pencil. I don't get it. Some stuff's 12.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, for some reason. Customers will be able to make payments through the Wallet app. Charges will be added automatically to your Apple Card's bill. When I set up, so I should mention this too, by the way. As Apple's starting to open stores, my iPhone failed 2 weeks ago. The video just started glitching and stuff like that. I could barely log in. I didn't really want to bring it anywhere. Apple sent me a prepaid box, FedEx, got it within a day, sent it in, got text messages. We received it. We're working on it. We fixed it. They got it back to me 5 days after I shipped it to them. I got it back. It's working perfectly.
Nice.
Yeah. So by the way, that system worked really well. And I'm pretty sure I got a new iPhone. It's a new serial number. There's none of those fine lines and scratches or anything. I think I got a new iPhone. Mine must have really bit it. But the reason I bring that up is, when you're first setting it up, it says, all right, now we're going to set up Wallet. And I had 10 credit cards in there. I didn't want to go through all that. I said, yeah, just do the Apple Card. There's nothing to do. It just works. If I'm going to, why not, right? I don't need a different credit card to use Apple Pay everywhere. So Apple, I think they got a kind of...
They know what they're doing.
They got a secret sauce here. You know, they made it really easy for me to use the Apple Card. And now, if I buy that new iMac...
It's going to be a lot harder to pay it off.
Oh, man. That's going to be a temptation.
I think... I'll still say that I think that Apple is one of the few companies in the world that could open their own bank where people could put deposits in.
That's what they've done.
And
practically.
They have enough. They have enough demand. We're already doing that with Apple Cash, right? You know, so I'm constantly putting Apple Cash into my thing because I just don't want to. It's faster. It approves faster. You know, so
what do you mean? You mean for sending for iMessages, you send Apple Cash, or what do you mean?
I actually push it in because, you know, if I want to use my ATM card at a location, I still have to type my code in, even if you're using it a lot of times, like Whole Foods. You still have to put in your code, and I don't want to touch anything. And I just don't like that it takes longer. So I move it to my Apple Cash. I just move money from my card to my cash all the time. I've got $300 or $400 in there all the time. And so then when I buy stuff, I just put my watch over it and it pays, and it's instant. You know, instant approval, and I don't have to. I know that I won't have to type any cards in, any codes in. And so, but there's still a handful of places that even if you're using a credit card, they want a signature. Even if you're using an ATM, they want you to still push the pins in. And so when you put it to Apple Cash, you just know it's just gonna. No one's gonna ask you anything.
Yeah,
it just does it. And so you know, I constantly just kind of have a balance in there that I'm keeping. So we're already putting money into the Apple savings account without the checking account without any interest.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't, you know, and I pass money. I mean, that's when Candace cuts my hair, I just text her money. I just,
nice.
I'll go, thanks. And I just text her.
So I've been using Venmo, but you're right. Everybody, if you've got you just have to have an iPhone. That's the only issue, but everybody does these days, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, if someone has, you know, a green text, then you can't send them anything.
You have to Venmo it. Apple, by the way, will still give you your 3% if you buy that. So in fact, it's reverse interest. They're paying you. Now, how much would you pay for that new iMac?
If you pay it off fast enough.
Yeah.
So that's the trick, because a lot of people won't.
6,000
Apple
divided by 12. That's not $500 a month.
$500 a month. It's cheaper than a car payment.
Probably spend more than that on wood pellets.
Yeah.
You know, they know. I tell you, this is. They don't break out services so that they know how much business they're getting with Apple Card, right, Renee? We don't know.
No, it's all glommed together into one giant money pile.
Actually, why am I asking you, Renee? Lori's the one who has to write it all down.
Yep,
she knows. But I bet you this has been a very successful product for Apple.
It's special. I mean, and here's why. It really, from the user experience, it really is convenient. I completely agree with you. I didn't even use Apple Pay because I had a long time ago and an unfortunate experience with it. And then I got Apple Card, and now I ask businesses, do you accept Apple Pay? But, you know, before I go to pay for things, I'm always disappointed when I find out they don't. Whereas before, I was always pulling out my bank card or always pulling out my credit card to pay for everything. And now I never want to touch, a point of sale, car thing. You know, I just want to click my, a touch ID.
One more reason to wear the
SE.
watch too, right?
Mm-hmm,
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and COVID definitely has accelerated the use of contactless.
Touchless.
Yeah, it really. The hardest part I have is I have to make sure my watch is ready to do it, because with my phone, of course, it won't see my face, and then I have a mask on, and there's a thing, but
that's why the iPhone SE is so good.
I love the SE. I gotta say, I was almost sad I got my iPhone 11 back. It's like, oh, now I gotta enter my code.
Yeah.
No, the only thing that gripes me is you can use the touchless, but still there's stores. It really bugs me. You want to use your loyalty card? Touch yes or no before you can use the pay. Mm-hmm. So I got to touch that filthy screen. And then I walk back to the car where my sanitizer is, with my finger in the air, like, "No, that's poison. Stay away."
You need that thing longer thing that
the condom.
you remember that?
Yeah, the finger condom. Oh no, I ordered that. That still hasn't come. I should have just bought the Chinese knockoff. It was a Kickstarter. It's like it goes in your keychain or you're in your belt, and you touch things with it, and you can open doors with it.
Conductible, yeah. A little, yeah. It's pretty funny.
And I still haven't gotten it because I bought it on Kickstarter. But of course, you could have bought for a quarter of the price from Chinese knockoffs instantly. Don't know what I was thinking, but the guys. I should check my.
By the time you get it, it won't be needed anymore.
I know.
Although it'll be nice because you will be germ-free while the rest of us are still turning doorknobs. So
I thought you were going to
still win.
I thought you were going to talk about the. I got the hygiene hand. Hygiene hand. There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, antimicrobial everyday carry keychain tool. I thought you were going to talk about Andy Anako's finger condoms that he was talking about.
I have a stack of those in my medicine cabinet.
You got to remember to. I don't want to know. You got to keep them in your car, dear. You got them in the wrong spot.
No, I know. You're right. I've got to keep them in my, with my bags. Like, I eventually learned how to remember to bring my reusable bags with me. I just got to remember to bring my finger condoms with me.
How many times do I say that? Oh crap. This is the other problem with Kickstarter. I didn't fill out the survey yet.
Oh, you did that once before, and you got
every time. Yeah. It was the keyboard or something. Mm-hmm. Oh man, how do I do it? Okay, so they've got them already. Apparently, they're shipping them already, but I didn't get mine.
But not to you.
Not to me.
I still have Kickstarters for the iPhone 4S I haven't gotten yet.
Really?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Really. They take forever sometimes, or they don't. Or like you said, you miss a survey somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not a store. He's got to keep reminding people it's not a store.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
It's not a store.
Sometimes
I've invested. I've invested.
I haven't been 100% happy with everything I got, but I don't think I've ever not gotten what I ordered on Kickstarter. But I have to look at it. I look at a lot of them and go, is that really going to work?
I'm still waiting for the unicorn that poops rainbows. When you tweet,
you promised me.
The guy came to the studio and showed me. I'll tell you how long ago. It was the other studio. It was the old studio. And I said, "Oh, that's great. I want that. It has a little vapor."
What?
It's a unicorn that has a little, I guess, a fan. I don't know how it works, but a little vapor creating thing in its butt. And it's also got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, so it's tied to the net. So you can set it up so that whenever you tweet, a little puff of rainbow gas comes out of it. And
oh no!
I could probably see why I'm never getting that one.
Leo, I have a vacuum cleaner that I would like to sell you. You must just buy anything that someone comes to your front door.
So
when
Alex says he's gotten every Kickstarter. Yeah, Alex, that's just because you don't order stuff.
I don't order very much. I will admit, I don't. I order very few things on Kickstarter because I look at them and I just go, I think that's a pipe dream. I don't think that's going to work. And
it's not real.
I also just think I'll just wait for it to come out and I'll pay more, but I just want to see it. The funny thing about the Kickstarter is you order things. The other side of that has been I order things and I get it. 6 months later, it's like a Christmas gift because I don't remember paying for it.
Absolutely.
Like it was so long ago. Like it just shows up. I'm like, what? I don't even know what this is. And I don't remember that I did it. No. And I'm just like, wow, somebody sent me something great.
I got a bunch of backpacks and gear in the mail. I thought, what is this? Why? I don't. And then I realized, 4 years ago or something, I ordered that. All right, back to the Apple news. I'm sorry. I'm very discursive today. I apologize. What is this Apple's fancy new network connector that you can't buy?
Yeah, that's what it is.
So what is it?
It's like a Wi-Fi network adapter for use in stores or in their organization. I think Oliver just wanted to kind of show everybody here's some things that Apple does on the inside that's kind of fun and cool, but we don't get to buy that.
This would be great. It's got a 2 gigabit Ethernet port. It's got a built-in battery, lightning connector, antenna. It supports 802.11b, G, and N, Bluetooth radio, and GNSS. 32 gigs of storage, a gigabyte of RAM. I mean, this is awesome.
It'd be pretty cool.
It's just a black bar, too.
$700 like the Mac Pro wheels.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's funny they
Another
don't
reason to inflame the Apple fans. Like, what? It's so expensive. I know, but it does so much.
They are reopening stores. They've reopened over 300 stores so far. Locations in France, Sweden, and the Netherlands this week.
But it's not really open. It's like you can come by and pick things up.
Okay.
Are you allowed in?
Yeah. You have to do
Okay.
social
Some of them,
distancing.
yeah.
There's
They
limited
opened, but-
hours. They're going to... all employees and customers have to wear face masks while in the store. You're right. At some stores, sales and service are storefront or curbside only. I think that's what it is around here. But
Right.
there are stores, and I think they might also do a questionnaire and temperature check at the door. So,
Yeah, I think they've already kind of laid out the plan for people attending inside, and it does involve temperature checks.
yeah. There was some hope yesterday. I was all excited because the WHO, it wasn't the official announcement, but somebody at the WHO said, oh, it looks like there's not any transmission from asymptomatic carriers.
Yeah.
It's very rare. They backtracked on that, by the way, if you read that and got excited. Because that would be really good news. That would mean you could take a temperature or ask, do you have sniffles or anything? And if and block them. But no, apparently WHO said, yeah, well, not really. Apple has updated its COVID-19. Well, I guess we're in the COVID-19 section now. They've updated their screening tool. As you know, it's funny, they didn't have this originally. They've added stuff that most other screening tools had about symptoms, and you can anonymously share info now, including age, number of existing health conditions, symptoms, potential exposure risks, and the state you're in, and that will be not sent. It'll be aggregated. It'll be sent anonymously to the CDC, so that they can understand better what's going on. And
They've been taking a ton of feedback. Like every time they talk about it, they've been listening. They've heard what people have said. They've added stuff to it. They've changed things. It's been a good process, I think. Good. I think they actually work surprisingly well together when they have a common cause.
Yeah. Yeah, good. I'm glad they're doing that, because as we open up, we're going to need some systems. There are summer colors for the iPhone. I'm not going outside, but if you wanted, you could get the summer colors.
Coastal
Look at that
gray,
vitamin C.
Linen blue, vitamin C.
The orange is called vitamin C. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's so pretty.
It is. It looks like a creamsicle. Makes me want to.
Yes,
it does.
So there's a C phone.
They don't have it for the iPhone SE though. They only have it for the 11 lineup. Yeah.
So Seafoam, which is, I guess, a greenish, vitamin C, and linen blue. So, okay, it looked like white initially, but that's a light green. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very faint colored.
And you can get a matching band as well. What is the band? Is it a fabric band? It must be, right?
No, it's the sports band.
Oh, sport. It's rubber.
I don't know. I think they should call them Apple Teeny, Quarantini. Winter Teeny.
I like it. We didn't get all the rumors in. I don't know if I credit this one at all. 4th generation iPad Air will switch to USB-C, while the Mini sticks with Lightning.
I think the bigger rumor there is that Apple's going to push a lot of the iPad Pro features down to the iPad Air, and that includes the basic design with USB-C. The only really weird one in there is that it won't have Face ID because that's too expensive. It'll have in-screen Touch ID, which sounds weird for an iPad, especially an LCD iPad, because most of the in-screen Touch IDs have used optical or ultrasonic sensors that don't go through, at least as far as we know, don't go through LCD now, and Apple's patents are all acoustic based. So I think it is credible in that Apple has historically taken features from the highest end, and as they've become less expensive over time and replaced by other differentiators on top, move those to the mid-range and then to the low end. And for example, this could allow it to be compatible with the Apple Magic Keyboard, which would sell more Magic Keyboards, and would also make the Pro technology more accessible to people who don't have, $700. It's bringing that back to the classic $500 iPad price point. So I think it's credible. I just don't know when. Like, would it be this fall? Would it be next spring? And I don't know which of the feature sets, like ProMotion probably won't make it through, but they do say it's mini LED, and that makes me think that maybe mini LED, Apple doesn't see it as a premium feature. They see it like in-plane switching, like IPS, as just, instead of being a product differentiator, being a brand differentiator. All Apple's displays are mini LED and they're awesome, sort of thing. So I found it really interesting. And it came from a bunch of people. So.
Oh, okay. So credible, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
The in-screen Touch ID, though, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of keeping the price low? It seems like Face ID would be less expensive than a brand new technology being brought to the iPad.
Sensors, it needs a bunch of sensors, where this just needs one little. Yeah, it just needs one little. But it just psychologically, people are going to say, well, I want that in my iPhone. Why can't I have that in my iPhone? And that's rumored for only next year's iPhone. So
I want it both, because when I'm wearing a mask.
That's what the rumor is.
Yeah.
If you're wearing gloves, you use the face. If you're using.
Having used the in-screen Touch ID on Samsung and OnePlus devices, Samsung's never really worked very well. So OnePluses are pretty quick and accurate.
Samsung's using the Qualcomm ultrasonic, and I believe OnePlus is using the Synaptic optical.
Yes.
And the problem with optical is twofold. One, it needs to light up to take the photo, and it's taking a photo. And they try to do a bunch of mitigations to make that more secure, but it's still taking a photo, where at least the ultrasonic one is doing a 3D model of your fingerprint.
Right. So Apple would probably use the ultrasonic for privacy reasons.
Capacitive is better. So far, like right now, Touch ID is capacitive, and that just uses electricity, and it's harder to fool because, like, there's been story, and they're better now. The second generation and third generation of this stuff has all been better now. They were fooling it with or like a forensic, like a prosthetic, mold. You just take. I think the Samsung one, they just took a fingerprint, put it on their finger, and opened it.
Right.
And those kind of things will always happen. You just want to make the barrier of entry higher than some kid with a little chemistry set in his basement.
Yeah. I'm actually most excited about iOS 14. Do you think they'll announce that June 22nd at WWDC?
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be.
It'll be in beta, but it'll be the new operating systems are like that's why they do that.
That is That is the thing. The only thing we're sure that they're going to release on the 22nd is the new iOS.
Okay, it'll be a fall release of the iPhone 12 for the rest of the world. Will they do a public beta? Probably. Will they do it June 22nd?
It'll probably be developer beta June 22nd, public beta within a month later, maybe slightly less, depending on like how reliable the developer beta is.
And they're saying
I don't think the public beta will be same day as developer beta though.
And they're saying, which is really good news, if your device runs iOS 13, it will run iOS 14. Or is that a rumor? Is that Apple saying?
No, the thing with that is that the only time, sorry.
Go ahead, Lori.
I think that's right.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Renee.
No, I was just going to say the only time they really don't do that is when a technology changes to a fundamental level, like when they stop supporting 32-bit processors, or they require Bluetooth LE for all the new functionality that they're adding. But they've been very good about pushing compatibility back as far as they possibly can.
Sure.
Sometimes you don't get certain features or certain apps because like there's no compute power, or it's missing a smaller component. But you almost always get 4 to 5 years of backwards compatibility on an iOS device.
And they would be starting production of the iPhone 12 soon, right? If they're going to get it out in the fall?
I think mass production can be delayed as late as July in order to have the standard September release. So I think the rumors that I've been hearing in the past, I know there's a new rumor that's out that says that mass production might be starting in July, which would mean the iPhone 12 would be on time. But the more
Broadcom is saying maybe not. They're a supplier.
Yeah, the rumors that seem more reliable are the ones that are saying that mass production is not happening in July. It's more likely August, which means that the iPhone 12 would come out in October. That's kind of
the iPhone 10R did that, and the iPhone 10 did that before. So it's not.
We had to wait. So do you think they'll do that same staggered release in the fall? where they have one.
Well,
I don't think anything will be ready earlier.
Nothing.
Yeah, the reason that this is happening this time isn't because one phone didn't get done in time. It's just because of the pandemic caused all of the suppliers issues that are pushing it all back a little bit. So I think I think that they might announce it as early as September, that you just won't be able to buy it until sometime in October.
Or and you might not be able to buy it in mass until November or December. I think that it's going to be that typical Apple is, especially if they put a bunch of new features into it, it could be very constrained supplies until early 2021.
Yeah.
The thing that was interesting to me is I just put up my video on iOS 14 a little while ago, and it changed so much over the last couple weeks and months, like just what was top of mind and what I thought was most needed, like in a few areas, like they have such good facial recognition, semantic rendering, and saliency now it'd be great to have anonymization built in so that you can mask people's faces or kids if you don't want pictures of your kids on social networks, or if you have to post something and there's license plate numbers in it. And they used to experiment with things like relay messaging, where they would you wouldn't need to go online. You could hop between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi direct connections, and that's great if you don't want to be on the network, but also if the network goes down and you still need to, and you're caught somewhere and you still need to get messages out. I think there's just a ton of stuff that may not make it into iOS 14, but I think given the world we're all inheriting right now, it would be really great if Apple could start to prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Cook, beautiful, I thought, sentiments posted on the Apple site about the protests and Black Lives Matter, and committed Apple to doing better. So did Satya Nadella. We talked about that on Sunday. And maybe this is step one of doing better. The Apple, if you go to the Apple Maps outside Lafayette Square and you zoom in a little bit, you see they've already updated it so that you can see, well, maybe not. Wait a minute. I thought they had. So that you could see the Black Lives Matter mural. Maybe I'm on the web that I can't see it, so that's probably what it is. Here it is. Let's go back.
You're on Google Maps, right?
Oh, is that what happened?
Maps I'm
on Google Maps, dummy. That's because I'm on a Linux. I
think did it as well, though.
I'm on a Linux box. Here it is, and here's from 9 to 5 Mac. Here's the image. Launch Google Maps when I click the link. So this was painted on the street not so long ago, but they were and so
right. It was less than a week ago that went up. Yeah.
This is
it was really quick.
So that's interesting. So Apple has, I guess these are all satellite images. Apple has these images, and probably has some update schedule. But it seems like when I look at my house, like it looks like it's like a year or two ago, in most cases.
That's what at least for me, it's usually about like 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
I think it very much depends on where you're at. So I think that in urban areas, a lot of these maps are updated pretty often because the urban areas update very often. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's a lower number of people that are looking at it. So it doesn't make sense to
pretty
cover
clear
it as
Apple.
Fast.
I agree with that, but I live in a major metropolis, and we don't get updated very often. So.
People in Sacramento think they live in a major metropolis.
Isn't it the capital?
I would say I would cut it off. There's a lot of attention in general. There's a lot of attention to the top 20 markets. I don't know whether Sacramento is a top 20 market or not.
I know.
But
I like to think of myself as big and important, but I know we're not.
I like to think of myself out in the middle of nowhere.
I got to point out, Albany is the state capital of New York. I don't know what that is. I guess you would think L.A. would be the state capital of California.
Yeah.
And New York City.
Why? Sacramento is just fine.
Yeah.
My kids love Sacramento. I had
the train museum, baby.
Year, so I was up there all the time, and So I was up there like I don't know, 50 days last year, and
why didn't
my
you
kids
come
came up
visit
a couple
me?
times. Because I didn't. So it didn't register for me that you lived in Sacramento. There's a couple people, you and Chris Fenwick, and a couple other folks that I didn't realize were in Sacramento. I don't know why. I just thought you were somewhere else in my head. And then when I found out, I didn't say anything because I was embarrassed that I hadn't hung out, And so
we're gonna meet up at the train museum next time you're in Sacramento.
Okay, sounds good. But my kids love it. It's a great. They went to Old Town. They had a great time, and so they'd come up a little bit. I was spending a lot of time. Yeah.
You can take Amtrak
downtown
to Sacramento, Alex. It's really fun to take the train up there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or take
got
Amtrak
really
to
used to the drive.
to San Jose for WWDC. It's pleasant. It's wonderful.
Yeah. No driving.
I love trains.
Yeah.
I love trains too. We took Amtrak from here. It's actually from Oakland, I guess, to Reno for New Year's Eve. One of our last trips.
Yeah, I would stack all my meetings on the East Coast just along Amtrak. So I'd go to Boston or all the way down to DC and anywhere in between. Anything that I could walk to from there was kind of where I'd stack all my meetings. And everyone else, I was like, we'll get to them eventually.
Why don't we start with your pick of the week, Alex, as we wrap the program up?
So we do video production, and one of the things that you have to deal with video production is playback. So a lot of times we're using playback. We're using something like a hyperdeck to do playback, but we need something else to just play out files. The client gives you a file, or you have a file for your show. You want to have it open. You want to have it closed. You want to have something in between. And for a long time, we used an application called Playback Pro. The funny thing about Playback Pro is this gets into the dangers of ignoring, of building your own thing, is they built a very high performance engine that was great for doing. It was really good at playing out all the video at any resolution, no matter what you wanted to do for production, and so everybody used it in events.
So just tell us how you would use this. I'm up on stage. We're giving a speech, and as you can see, and then you go to the video.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because what happens is you don't put videos into Keynote. Like you don't want those videos to be in Keynote. No. So people have their slides up there, but when they say, okay, now let's play, let me show you something, and boom, it plays. Now that's being played out of. There's a couple different, really expensive things like Watch Out is like $30,000, and EVS is $120,000. Most event companies don't use that. That's for sports. All the replays that you see are in that. There's Softron has some play out. There's Playback Pro. And then there's another one called QLab, which I think I've recommended in the past, which is a really powerful playback system, but it's really complex. There's another app that actually came up. I didn't even know it existed, and this is an app that came up in my morning office hours that someone mentioned that was called MIDI, and MIDI is a playback app, and it's just simple. So it's a simple app that is also very powerful. So this really sits on. It's really a true Apple. Like QLab in a lot of ways, it's a very Apple-esque, thing that takes full advantage of the Apple infrastructure. But what it does is just gives you a really easy way to play out video files. You can play them out of if you have a Blackmagic card or an AGA card, you can play them out of those. It'll even do what's called key fill, which means it'll put out both a color and black and white, so that it'll key in your system, but it'll also just play out lots of movies. And it's just a much simpler version than what QLab does. QLab has an incredible amount of power. These are the two QLab's really become one of the leaders in playback on the Mac side, but it's got with great power comes great complexity, I guess is what I would say. And so it takes a lot longer to train somebody up in QLab. And so we were really looking for something that was simpler to use and a little less expensive. And MIDI is about, I think it's $300, and it's a really nice playback system that gives you, it has a lot of stuff built into it, MIDI control and OSC and DMX. You can have lots of different options for your audio out. You can even send it out over NDI, which is useful to send it into some editing packages. And again, there's a lot of things that this is, you can have it built in. If you're using something like a TriCaster or vMix or Memo Live or other things, you can have playback built into these apps. But sometimes you want a separate operator on a separate machine, doing something for you and playing it out. And so MIDI, I think, is what we're kind of slowly moving towards as our software solution. You can download it for free and run it for, I think, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then it expires. So you can't really use it in the show, but you can definitely get a full featured version to see if you like it. Kind of where we're looking at it is if I want to play out something that I know I'm playing out, I'm going to load it into a hyperdeck, so I have a hardware playout, that's connected to my switcher and so on and so forth. But if something comes to me last minute and I just want to throw it into a playlist and play it out, if I want to build a playlist out, and I want something relatively inexpensive, MIDI is something that we're pretty excited about. So anyway, and it's just simple. It just does the thing, so to speak. And so anyway, if it's something that you think you need, you can, again, download it for free and play with it for up to 20 minutes. and it's full featured just for 20 minutes. So it's and you can restart it. It doesn't mean it goes away, but obviously you wouldn't use it. It's I think it's a genius way of promoting your app because I mean, if you really want to, you could work at it for a while, but eventually if you were using it often, you'd be like, I think I'm going to pay for it and just have it work. So anyway, it's good. It's good. It's a really cool app and really simple, well designed, and relatively inexpensive for what it does.
MITTI from IMIMOT.com.
We don't even know how to say that. Yeah, exactly.
I think they're French because some of their products have a French. They might be from Montreal or France. Like Vézé, Montreal. IMIMO.com. So thank you
I
for.
think that they're out of Hungary.
Hungary. Oh, even better.
And I think it's really one. I think they is him. I think there's one guy that sits there and writes it, which sometimes can be difficult, but other times can be something like you can see in the other apps that he builds. He's probably doing this and writing something that he needs, which is oftentimes a great app.
That's what you want. Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing something I have no desire to buy. Saving me more money for
Every
Lori.
once in a while, you got to do a production.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. Yeah. For Lori's pick of the week. Go ahead, Lori.
Well, this one isn't a one to spend mony on. So
this is really good. In fact, I know this site. So go ahead.
So yeah, this is a dot card it's from the Black Lives Matter website. So you can go to blacklivesmatter.com, click on the resources, and you'll find this here. This is a dot card that's made by a 17-year-old kid who just put together a bunch of different resources that you can use. And my personal favorite, if you go to the section More Resources, you'll learn about and then go to Educate Yourself. This is what I do every single day. I go to the Educate Yourself section. Yeah. And the lesson plan on being an ally is my absolute favorite thing. So one of the feelings that I was having last week, when all these protests were coming out, was I was feeling both a sense of how can I do more? It's so big and there's so much to unpack and there's so much to educate ourselves on that it felt overwhelming. And then I also felt this like spiraling shame that was sort of paralyzing me from doing anything. Yep. And this lesson plan on being an ally is where I started. And it has been so incredibly helpful to me because one of the daily things that you can do for 10 minutes a day, it gives you 30 lesson plans that you can do for 10 minutes a day to just educate yourself and learn more about what's going on in the world and the social injustices and the oppression of Black folks. And so the first week that I did it, the lesson plan number 5 is to send an email to your local officials, asking them to defund police or asking them to, whatever thing that you want to say to them. By that day, I felt like I had so much more information that I didn't just copy and paste whatever was there. I actually spoke to them with my own feelings and my own heart. So I immediately felt like I'm doing something better by educating myself because it's helping me understand what's going on in the world so that I can talk to other people more about it. And that was just the first week. So I think for anybody out there who felt like me or is feeling like I was feeling, where I don't know where to start, I don't know how to learn, 10 minutes a day is a great place to start. And this dot card has been so invaluable to me. There's in addition to these little 10-minute bits, there's tons of resources that you can look to for just learning how to better educate yourself. There's definitely donation things that you can look to. So these are, the Black Lives Matter, their ideas, and it's all brought together for you. And again, it was just this 17-year-old kid who just wanted to create something to help everybody to learn about the issues and better educate themselves, which right now is our most important thing, is educating ourselves so that we can make some actual changes and not continue to have the same things go wrong. We don't, just because the trend is over, I think it says it at the top, just because the trend is over doesn't mean the issues are. And here's a way that we can make sure that we continue to, keep this going, keep this ball rolling, and make real changes in our society.
Love it. The URL might be a little bit complicated because it's Black Lives Matters, plural. Get it? Black Lives Matters.card, which is 2 R's, CARRD.co. What a great resource. Thank you. And it doesn't cost you anything but time.
Yeah, and you can also find it on the Black Lives Matter homepage. If you go to blacklivesmatter.com, click on the resources, this is there for you. That's how I found it. So it's a little easier that way.
Cool. I really like the education thing. I think that's important, especially for us white people. We don't.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a lot to learn, but
and there's even a section called Racism for Beginners. So you can really start like from the beginning and really teach yourself and really educate yourself on the issues.
Yeah, if you watch John Oliver's last week tonight from last
Unbelievably
Sunday,
good.
Wasn't that amazing? Very powerful, especially at the end. Just a little clip. Just blew me away, and it made me cry. Renee Ritchie, your pick of the week.
It is impossible to follow Lori's pick of the week.
That's a pretty good one. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize.
No,
I was glad that I got to go first.
It was. It is so good. Please do that. Mine are quasi self-serving, but not really, and I'll explain that. Mostly when people go to WWDC for the last couple of years, Apple's provided pins, as part of the developer bundle. You get a jacket and you get pins, and people love them. They've given out pins for a few years now, but because this isn't in person, there aren't going to be any pins. So an enterprising developer got on Kickstarter and decided to make a set of pins. They're careful to avoid what Apple would do exactly, because there are lions in those, or dragons in those sorts of waters, but they have a variety of pins, and they asked me if I would be part of the I forget what they call it in Kickstarter, but if I would be part of what gets unlocked as more people contribute. And so there's a pin with my new logo on it, and all the proceeds for that are being donated to the ACLU. So if
that's
you go,
so cool.
I'm
You haven't been unlocked yet.
Great.
So
I don't know if I don't know if you heard me, but I just bought.
I heard that pin.
Now.
Thanks.
That was me buying right now.
So there's WWDC 20, kind of the classic design, a graphic tribute. I love this for Craig Federighi, Hair Force One. That's really cool.
And there's some you can vote on, like it was a technophobic Mac Pro screen, and just there's a bunch of other really fun ones.
That's really neat.
And there's
the RR. That's a good logo, by the way.
Did
you do that yourself?
I love your logo.
Yeah.
No, actually, Simon at Lonely Towel on Twitter, he does the branding for all the standard broadcast. Sorry, not standard broadcast, standard TV people, and Dave Wiskus helped out a lot as well.
That's nice.
So it turned out really nicely. And along those lines, everything was closed down for a while, so we couldn't do anything with the new channel. But we're starting to slowly be able to put stuff out, and you can now get the same logo on a mug, and it's up for pre-order now, but there's sort of two cool things about it. One is anybody who buys the mug gets a free month of Nebula, which is the service that we put up all our videos on. And I just did a Buffy the Vampire Slayer Nebula original, which is completely different than anything I've ever done before. So it lets us do things that the YouTube algorithm would really punish us for. But I had a really hard time last week just talking about tech in general and dealing with, making videos. And the way I decided to sort of make it okay in my own heart and mind is that I'm donating everything from everything I made last week, and part of what I'm doing this week, because some stuff took longer than others, to a lot of the charities that are going on now. I did the bail funds already, and I've done Jonathan Morrison's. He has an amazing set of YouTube videos up for Black Lives Matters, and I've donated to both of those, and I'll be doing a large donation to the ACLU as well. So pretty much whatever I can bring in over last week and this week. I'm not used to being indie, so I didn't realize how different the cash flow was from just having a regular job. But if I produced any content, or you bought anything from anything I'm associated with last week or this week, it's going to go to one of those organizations.
Very nice. Very nice. The store is at standard.tv. And of course, the
/
pin
Renee Ritchie
/ Renee Ritchie with a dash in between Renee and Ritchie, and the pins, WWDC pins. Yet another Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Well, I'm signed in. I should just buy it.
You might as well.
Might as well.
But just make sure that you fill out the survey.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't actually wear pins.
They're cool. I've never put any of mine on. I just have them in their perfect little cases.
Yeah, I have some great pins.
I joined.
Yeah.
Apple's made some beautiful ones.
It's nice to collect, right? You could say I've been all over there.
Yeah.
I
Then
wish
you
they
get
would do
those,
the jackets.
those big lanyards that they have at Disneyland where you put your WWDC
Your
pins all
pins
down
on
the
them.
front of it.
I need a pin
What is
lanyard.
it, D23? I got the D20. I forget if it's D23. It's D something, and they are amazing. I didn't know it. I thought I'd get the discount for signing up to Disney Plus, but the discount didn't apply in Canada, so I joined, just spuriously.
Oh,
but the amount of stuff they send you is unbelievable.
Yeah,
and the pins were just gorgeous.
I was a premium subscriber, or I guess, yes, member of D23 for a while too. And yeah, they send you this incredible package. It's amazing.
What is this, some sort of Disney thing I don't know about?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's a Disney fan club, but it's the Disney fan club.
I thought it was the Disney Genome Project, where they take your D23.com. What is the 23? What does that have to do with anything?
It is the year that Walt Disney moved to California.
23. Oh. All right. See, live and learn. Obviously not a big enough Disney fan. I want to mention something. Actually, Micah brought it up on iOS today, but it's something I was planning to make my pick of the week this week. If you play indie games, you might know itch.io, Itch.io. I love this site for simple, fun, weird games. Many of them play on Mac OS as well as Windows and Linux. And they have a bundle for racial justice and equality that is mind-boggling. They've got 1,068 creators of indie games. You can get 1,068 games for $5.
Wow.
The proceeds go to the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund and the Community Bail Fund. Now, I'm guessing you're not going to be such a cheapskate that you're going to go and say, well, I'm going to get my 1,068 games for $5, so you can add a little to that. And they've done pretty well. More than 250,000 contributors. They've raised $3.1 million towards their goal. The average contribution, $11. So I think people are throwing in a little bit more. But this isn't, even if you play one game, most of these games cost more than $5 just for the one game. Basically, you'd have enough entertainment for the rest of quarantine and then some. So, steampunk airships, possession-based traditional. There's so many. It's crazy. It's crazy. This looks like so much fun. itch.io. Their bundle for racial justice and equality. It's nice to see everybody pitching in. Gonna make a difference, aren't we? Thank you, Rene Ritchie. You can find him on the YouTube, youtube.com/Rene Ritchie, no dash, at Rene Ritchie on the Twitter. We will see you again soon. Same with you, Alex Lindsay. Tell me when you want me to be there, and I'll be there for office hours.
Awesome. I'll ping you after the show.
Okay, 090.media. On the Twitter at Alex Lindsay. And yeah, if you go to youtube.com/Alex Lindsay, you can see the office hours and find out how you can get involved. There's a Zoom link there. And of course, the fabulous Lori Gill, managing editor at iMore. She's on Twitter at Appaholic.
Hold on. I'm buying this bundle for racial justice real quick.
That'll keep you busy for a while. Something to do while you're smoking your brisket.
Right.
And it's good not to forget, because people are starting to go back to normal. And for a lot of people, there is no going back to normal. So it's good. We can keep awareness up as well.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
really
definitely.
True. Yeah. I was thinking the other day, I was, Lisa and I went on a walk. We went to a local bee farm. And it made me very sad to think that there are people who going out the door is a calculus, is an equation, is a scary thing to do. Just showing up in public and getting to do the things that we white folk can do without thinking about it, for them is a challenge, and it's tragic, and we've got to fix it. And I think that for the first time in my lifetime, it's not just lip service, but we really have the national will to change things. I'm really hopeful, very hopeful. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Come back again next week. What do you say? All right? Okay. Andy will be back next week. One of you will be gone.
We actually, you don't know this, Leo, but we actually fight with each other the day before to see who gets to be on the show next.
Okay.
Yeah, Laurie Rochambeaued Andy, so he couldn't make it this week, but he should be recovered by
Cage match. All right. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. We do MacBreak Weekly around 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on a Tuesday morning. You can come by and watch. That would be 1800 UTC. The stream is at live audio and video is at twit.tv/live. There's a YouTube live stream. There's a Twitch stream. There's a Mixer stream. But all of them are aggregated at twit.tv/live. So you can pick the stream that you want to watch there. There's a chat room going on at the same time. That's that interactivity thing Alex was talking about, irc.twit.tv. It's always right in my face during the entire show. But there's a lot of great people in there, and they're there 24/7. So anytime you're looking for some geek companionship, that'd be a great place to check out, irc.twit.tv. We also have on-demand versions of the show at twit.tv/mbw. You can download your audio or your video content there, or subscribe in your favorite podcast application. That's probably the best thing to do. That way you get it automatically as soon as it's done on a Tuesday afternoon. If you watch asynchronously, you can also chat asynchronously because we now have a forum. Great place to hang out. Every show gets a post there, so you can go to the post for any individual show as soon as it's posted. This is episode 717. You go there and you can comment on it, but there are other threads going on all the time too. Some of our hosts go in there. I'm in there every day. That's twit.community. Twit.community. I think we can wrap this sucker up, which I'm sad to say means you have to get back to work because break time is over. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey folks, I'm Micah Sargent, host of Hands on iOS right here on the Twit Network. If you've got iOS devices or watchOS devices or tvOS device, any kind of Apple mobile device, you are going to want to check out Hands on iOS. It is the best way to make the most of those devices. I walk through tips, tricks, and everything in between, plus answer your questions. So be sure to check it out. It's twit.tv/HOI.